Welcome to Agency Bytes, a podcast for agency owners, hosted by agency veteran and coach Steve Guberman. Agency Bytes is a podcast focused on delivering actionable agency information from agency experts in about 25 minutes. Why 25 minutes? Because who has the attention span for much more these days? And you can squeeze in a listen between meetings with time for a bathroom break or coffee refill before your next meeting.
Welcome to Agency Bytes, a podcast dedicated to helping creative entrepreneurs thrive. I'm Steve Guberman from Agency Outsight, where I coach agency owners to build the business of their dreams. Today, my guest is Tony Wilson, founder of Accquip. Tony's journey from launching his first business to joining the Great Resignation in 2021 has been driven by his desire to help agency owners grow profitable, fulfilling businesses without sacrificing their well-being. Through Accquip, he's empowering agency owners to create companies they truly love. I really love that mission, the fact that you have like empowerment in there and just how far that goes. Tony, it's great to see you. Thanks for joining me.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on, Steve. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. So Great Resignation. I didn't realize you were one of the great resigners.
I was indeed. Here we are in the middle of COVID and I'm walking around the park and listening to all these podcasts talking about financial independence, this, financial independence, that. And this through line of start your own thing comes up. And I'm like, I wanted to be an entrepreneur forever. Mm-hmm. And then finally, I'm just like, ooh, I think it's time. And as we all know, Great Resignation, hop out into you're working for yourself. And that was great.
I think that when the calling is there, it wakes up the entrepreneurship that's always been there. At least my experience and many others that I've spoken to, even if you like listen to Gary Vee, things like that. And so I just think that when the calling comes, it's been there and you're finally like at a point where you can listen to it and forge whatever you need to forge ahead with. And so congrats, my condolences, welcome, all of the above.
Very true.
So talk about Accquip. I love the name also. What's the backstory and what are you doing there?
Yeah. So Accquip is a combination of the word accounting and equipping. I'd always wanted, my vision had always been, I fundamentally believe that if you as an entrepreneur understand the language of business, which is accounting, you will make such better decisions in your business than if you didn't understand the language of business. And so just that core concept of that core kind of differentiator of being really education focused and education first. And I love to teach. I love to have those light bulb moments, both with clients, but also with my people, right? Like when you see them flourish because of the learnings that they're having, it's been super, super impactful. So started this off originally geared towards just creating educational content and then realizing I also kind of need to put food on the table. And so
educational content's not paying the bills? Come on.
Unfortunately, not yet. Apparently you need quite a bit of a following for people to want to buy your courses. So decided that we would get into more the done for you service as opposed to the DIY education. Because I'm the sole breadwinner in our family, and we've got 4 children under the age of 4. So,
put the kids to work. What are you doing? Come on,
right? That's true.
Wait, 4 kids under the age of 4?
Under the age of 4. Our oldest is 3.5.
Wow! And then you have twins somewhere in there.
We do. Our second and third are identical twin girls.
Wow, bless you, man. What a beautiful gift. But yeah, they're not earners yet, I guess.
Not yet.
Yeah. So you're working with agencies primarily or exclusively?
I would say primarily, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And helping them get a grasp on their numbers and the financial health of their business or lack thereof. When you and I first had a conversation a while ago, you introduced me to the concept of days till zero. And that has kind of been spinning around in my brain since then. I've spoken to a number of agency owners where that's come up as a topic, and talk about what that means to you and to the health of a business.
Yeah. So this is a metric that we came up with, days to $0. It's this concept that, especially in agency life, you always have a day in the future where your account is projected to hit $0. But yet, for whatever reason, we don't know what that number is. We instead, what we do is we try to get close to it by saying, oh, I have 6 months of expenses in the bank account, or I have 3 months of expenses in the bank account. Or if you're like most agencies right now, because of how brutal 2023 and 2024 have been, you're probably like, maybe I've got a couple weeks in the bank
Yeah.
before I run to zero. But I think this constant undercurrent and fear of not really knowing what that number is drives us to make a lot of reactive decisions. And so what we like to do is we like to check in on that on a weekly basis, so that you know, how is that number changing. So again, you're making more proactive decisions. You're not waiting till like, oh crap, I can't make payroll next week.
Yeah. Yeah. Or, oh, I should have let somebody go 3 months ago or 2 months ago. There's more of a proactive planning process, too many P's there, as opposed to, being super reactive. What are what are the key factors that are feeding into this? Because it's not just bank account. And also, sidebar question, is that account that you refer to just the operating account, or is it all the money in the bank? Like, how do you play there?
Great question. Yeah. So addressing that question first, what we'll typically look at is whatever your liquid assets are, relatively liquid assets. So we're typically just looking at your cash or cash equivalents. If you've got an investment balance that's just in like a brokerage account that you could quickly liquidate, we might include that number in there too. But if it's like tied up in a different investment that might take months before you can get to it, we're not going to include that in that number. But yeah, if it's in a savings account, anything like that, those are all included in our overall cash balance. And then in terms of like what goes into creating that days to $0 or projecting that out, we think that pipeline data, CRM data, especially in agency life, is critical to good cash flow forecasting. And so we actually get into what are the deals that you have in your pipeline? What's the estimated amount of that deal size? And then also based on where they are in the deal stages, there's maybe like a higher percentage likelihood that something's going to close based on, if it's further down the pipe. So we factor all of that in, and then we marry that up with what are you planning on spending in your business? So kind of a little bit of a budgeting. You marry those two things together along with what's your current cash balance, and you get yourself to days to $0.
Yeah. I guess the biggest difference there with what I typically see as owners keeping their eyeballs on is certainly there's the expenses, and maybe they're mapping that out week to week in a column or whatever in a spreadsheet. But I don't see as often taking into consideration the value of my pipeline and time to not even time to zero, but time till opportunity A is going to hit and opportunity B is going to hit, and how they're going to impact what that days till zero are. How do you agencies that are running on Profit First? How does this integrate or coincide?
Yeah. Well, I'd say Profit First being mainly a method of setting money aside so that you have money for taxes, or you've got money to make payroll and that kind of stuff. I think it can certainly work, because again, we're looking at the total picture of all of your different bank accounts. Where Profit First is get you physically moving cash into different bank accounts. I think more so what people should be focusing on in this is not making a decision. Like when we're talking about like, what does our pipeline look like? We want to make decisions that take into consideration the fact that we actually have a really sizable deal that's coming down the pipeline. We can't afford to get rid of some of our staff, for example, because if we do, then we have no way of executing on all this really good pipeline.
That's one of the most common kind of chasing tail challenges that I see agency owners. I see this, cliff coming up, we're going to drop off, and I can't get rid of these people because, man, if all these deals close, if half these deals close, how are we going to service them? So, I mean, that's a massive, massive stress for agency owners. And so days till zero, knowing that, all right, I've got that much cash reserve for 4 months, 6 months. What's your recommendation there on how many days they should have?
Yeah, great question. So we came up with this these different like benchmarks. So we say if you're less than 60 days, you're in red light territory. So when you're in red light territory, it's like all hands on deck. We're stemming the bleeding, all this kind of stuff. Because once you drop below 60 days, you're typically also going to be running into timing issues. If you're above 60 days, you're still going to be okay. You're probably well capitalized enough where you don't have to worry about like the timing of when payroll comes out. You start dropping below 60 days, you might go from 55 days to $0 to like tomorrow I can't make payroll.
Yep.
So under 60,
it happens quick.
It's so quick.
Yeah.
It's so quick. When you're that low, it's really quick. So it's all hands on deck. So we're talking about things like we're making more emergency measures, whether that's laying people off. Although I would argue you probably should have been laying people off before you hit 60 days. Certainly, if you have a line of credit available to you, you're probably looking at when do we need to draw on that line of credit and having proactive conversations with your bankers. Because that's another big thing. If I can just say this out right now, being proactive with your conversation with your banker and the people who are holding your line of credit goes a long way in maintaining that relationship. Because if you come to them because you're like, oh, I can't make payroll tomorrow, I need this today, that's going to be a huge red flag for them versus, hey, we're coming up to our client's going to pay us next week, but we have to make payroll this week. Is it okay if we draw on this, to float that 1 week difference? Works a lot better for bankers.
Yeah, talk through more of a bridge of a gap as opposed to I'm screwed, I need a bailout.
Exactly.
They don't want to be the bailout; they want to be the bridge.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I think it's also really helpful to have this days to $0 number in mind, because one of the ways that's been working for our clients is we start to frame decisions and money decisions specifically in terms of like how many days impact is that going to have, right? So, for example, when we're talking about, hey, I think we need to buy this one thing, or I think we need to start this subscription or something like that. Can we afford it? Is always the question I'm asked. And if I look at their days to $0, I'm like, well, currently you have 106 days until you hit $0. If you make this purchase decision, it's going to be 104 days till $0. And I'm like, 2 days, not going to make a difference. I'm fine from a cash flow perspective. And immediately it's like, oh, I feel way more comfortable with that.
Yeah. Are there other stages? So red light is 60 days. What's like 61 to 90? Or like, what are the different levels?
61 to 90 is yellow light. 90 to 120 is green light. And then anything above 120, we're like, you're golden. Like if you're 120 plus, 121 plus, you're in a really good spot. In fact, I would even argue that there actually comes a point in time, I'm going to guess many of your listeners probably are not in this spot, but there does come a point in time where you actually may have too much cash, in which I would say it's probably burning a hole in your pocket. You need to find ways to reinvest it back in your business. So, but knowing that many people are probably not in that spot and probably won't be for a little while, we don't need to go to that.
So, but for those rare cases, what are the tax implications or just the dangers of having, 7-8 months of cash reserves in the bank?
Great question. So when it comes to the tax implications, there's actually not much. It's going to be more so on the opportunity cost of that capital, right? So we all know inflation is what it is. The last couple of years, inflation has been wild. It's been really, really high. So they say that any cash that's sitting idle that you don't actually need to use in your day-to-day business. So this excess, the reserves, the savings. Effectively, you're just losing money by having it sit there on the shelf. So the way that I liken this is, man, if I were to work with Steve Guberman, I could probably track a certain ROI to the investment in the coaching that I get with Steve. And man, if the work that I do with Steve generates 5 times the return on whatever I'm spending on my coaching, well, that is a way better investment than it sitting in the bank account. So I'm going to be pushing my clients towards that end. A lot of times what I see, we hold ourselves back in agency world. We hold ourselves back from doing the right investments in our sales and marketing because we just think of it as an expense. We think we're wasting money, and we're not. We're just not.
Yeah. They've got to be seen as investments. And the point, one of the key points of profitability in a business like ours, in a service business, is to make it better, optimize process, people, all of that. And so are you taking the time to, re-examine your positioning, re-examine the systems that you're using? Can you bonus people out with some of that cash and, increase morale and, things like that? What are some of the other kind of I don't want to say red light, but like alarming numbers that you monitor with clients through your process?
Yeah. So we're talking about the days to $0 mainly as a cash flow measure. Cash flow is always going to be downstream from profitability, right? So to the extent in your agency that you are getting strong profits, you have a strong profit model, you're necessarily going to see eventually a cash flow implication of that strong profitability. So if we could just go upstream here for a minute, we'll leave behind cash flow for just a second and talk about profitability. The number one thing that I see is a breakdown in the gross margin. And for listeners who aren't familiar, gross margin is essentially your revenues less your direct costs equals your gross profit. Gross profit divided by revenue is your gross margin. The general rule, golden rule of agency life is anything less than 50% is likely too low. There's an argument made that, if you're working primarily with contractors or if you are a large agency, maybe it's okay for you to be a little bit lower on that. But certainly if you are a studio or like a more boutique agency, I want to be seeing 55%, maybe 60%, depending on the type of work that you're doing. So gross margins are a big one.
Interestingly, I know more agencies that really only focus on net profit. And so their target is like, oh, am I at 20 or 30%? And if I'm below 20, that's the alarm. I know very few agencies who, as a practice, just through conversation and discovery, are tracking gross profit. And I think that that's a huge miss, because I think you can see a lot more coming sooner if you're tracking that on a regular versus just focusing on the bottom line.
Yeah. And here's why that happens most of the time. If we're honest, most of the time, the reason why net profit is really the only thing we're tracking as agencies is because our chart of accounts and how we structure our accounting data, our finance data, is a dumpster fire. So what you get is you get revenues and you get expenses. And it's just a mess. I mean, you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yep.
And so, what we part of what we do in our work is we structure that data so that it's really easy to find what the gross margins are in a moment's notice. And why I think it's so wise, especially if you're $1 million plus in revenue, like there's no questions you should be tracking your gross margins, is because you're really flying blind if you have a profit, let's say a net profit margin of 20%, to your point. We could say, yeah, 20%, that's healthy. But I don't know if that's 20% because, well, our gross margins are garbage. Oh, but by the way, we're also not spending anything on sales and marketing. Because what you have is a 20% net profit margin that's eventually going to become a death spiral next year because you don't have any lead gen, rev gen, anything like that. You have no rev gen engine at all. It looks great on paper today, but it's only a matter of time before your thing implodes. Conversely, if I know what my gross margin is, I could say I'm making excellent gross margins and I'm reinvesting a ton of them. And that's how I get to 20%. Now I have a healthy business model, but you don't know that if you're just looking at your net profit margin.
And the other kind of piece of that is, if I know I've got really healthy gross margins, but my net profits are tanked, I have a more clear picture that I can look at to understand why.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, it's not that you are underselling yourself. If you have strong gross margins, it typically means you're probably pricing yourself competitively. You're doing a good job pricing yourself, and or your labor costs are commensurate. Like you're not overpaying necessarily. What it probably means is you may either have some too much overhead bloat or really inefficient rev gen systems.
Or both, yeah. Is there I don't want to say formula, but kind of a best practice that you recommend to do a review on bloated overhead, or see where there's redundancies in systems, or things like that could help increase gross profit?
Yeah, that's a great. On the gross profit side, so we're talking revenues and direct costs. On that side of things, I think typically what you find is rarely is it poor gross margins across the board. Usually what it is you have some incredible clients, incredible projects, and then you've just got these absolute garbage projects that you're working on that are just dragging everything down, right? Like almost all the time that's what's happening. So I would say probably the best bang for your buck is to get down at a project level to understand your profitability, because that's when you can start to say with greater specificity, okay, these types of projects, whether it's the type of industry we're working in or the type of work that we're doing, are just dragging us down. Meanwhile, these are 65, 70% gross margins. We're going to double down on this so that we can maximize our gross margins.
Most shops, there is a specific delivery where they are bleeding on a specific, whether it's on an account or a type of project across multiple accounts. I would say the most popular is like over servicing a PR account or customized web dev, and pricing customized web dev wrong is just they get just destroyed on profits. And then they do a postmortem like, why did we lose so much money on this? Because we didn't know how long it was going to take to build that and this and
Yeah.
the other thing. So,
Or simply put, like you talk about like web dev. I'm thinking about web development. Client of mine is working on a project, and when we peel back the layers, we see, well, this one project or these types of projects, we tend to just have really bad gross margins. What is happening? Oh, that's because they had like the client just could not make up their minds about the website copy. And so we had to keep on making updates and yada, yada, yada. And so what you can do is now with greater precision, you can also update your process, your operating processes to say, well, part of our agreement is that you get X number of revisions. Boom.
yep.
We've now put some scope and defining lines so that we don't have these massive overruns like we've had in the past.
Yeah. And, or, revising the process to say, we're going to use dummy copy until your copy is finalized in a Google Doc or in a whatever other process. And we're not going to implement until any updates after that is client responsibility or over revisions, things like that. So yeah, you get the opportunity to look back and say, all right, where are we losing it? How can we adjust it so we don't lose it every time or any more times? Yeah, that's a big loss. Yeah. Talk about tools and things that you recommend agencies be should be leaning into as far as time tracking, reviewing numbers, things like that.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I would say time tracking is good. I know it can be a dirty word, especially for more design oriented agencies, more creative agencies rather. I will just say my heart behind time tracking and why I think it's so valuable is not because it's something we're going to micromanage people on, because that's never proved to be helpful. But rather it's just one more set of data that helps us to just have a greater insight into what's happening, especially from a operations perspective.
Yep.
So, when we're talking about time tracking, for example, I think a pretty common one in the space is Harvest, right? If you are not going to go the route of doing kind of a more all-in-one project management solution, Harvest does a pretty great job for time tracking. A lot of my clients who were on other time tracking tools have since migrated to Harvest. I also personally like Harvest because I have access to that API and I can pull a lot of the data, and it makes my life a lot easier. But
Yep.
I do really like Harvest. But besides that, I know some of these more all-in-one solutions for larger agencies. One of my clients just hopped on Forecast app, which is not Harvest Forecast. It's something else.
Yep. It's a separate one, but Harvest does have a forecast app plug-in
that's
as
right.
well.
That's right. Yeah, and like a tool like that, they've got time tracking in it or time cards in it as well. I know Parallax, I think they have time tracking as well, but I'm not familiar. Those would be for much larger agencies, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, good stuff. I think too many agencies are kind of running by the seat of their pants and being very reactive and need to get a better hold on their numbers, build out whether it's their own dashboard or leverage a company and organization and systems like you guys have in place. But certainly, you get above $250,000, $500,000, closer to $1 million. Get it off the owner's plate. Get somebody who's financially sound minded to operate as a CFO or whatever you want to call it, and track these numbers and keep them on a dashboard so they're front of mind.
Yeah, and I would say to that end, my experience has been some of the best outcomes for my clients have not necessarily come from the people who are just like not involved at all in numbers. Typically, these are people who are very well self-taught people who could probably make something work and come up with their own dashboards.
Yep.
But just merely taking that off their plate, they can now have such a much more fresh perspective. And then they might have already had an inkling in one direction, but to have that second voice to come in with their own data to kind of either like affirm that or potentially like come against that point of view, that can be really, really valuable to have that kind of gut check.
Yeah, I love that. So this is the inaugural episode where I built the GPT to deliver my random rapid fire questions to close the episode out with. So,
Love it.
First question for you is, if your business had a mascot, what would it be?
Oh, it would probably have to be some type of dog. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Are you a dog family?
I have been. My wife is 100%. She's like, oh, we need a dog. And I'm just like, we have 4 children under 4. So
what's a 5th? You'll never notice.
Right. True.
What's a childhood hobby that you wish you never gave up?
Ooh, probably playing piano, to be honest. It's therapeutic. It just engages your brain in such a different way. I love it. Piano.
Yeah, I wish I was musical. I'm the most unmusical person in the world. What is one thing that agencies waste way too much time on?
I would say trying to play business. It sounds so bad, but like so much of the work just needs to be like, just get out there and sell. Just get out there, have conversations, and focus on the selling and less on the how am I going to scale this thing? Like, I think, I could go on. It could be a whole other episode about that, but I would just say don't play business too much.
Love it. We'll do a part 2 on don't play business too much. Tony, thank you. Appreciate you joining me. Thank you for sharing your time and your experience and with wisdom with us all. I appreciate you.
Oh, I appreciate you. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
Thanks again for tuning in to Agency Bytes. If you know someone with expert knowledge on a topic that agency owners would love to hear about, go to agencyoutsight.com/podcast-guest and nominate them.